At 11:47 p.m., the house gave a long, tired sigh, and the hallway lit the wrong color. Smoke slipped under the door like a secret that finally chose me. My heart knew before my head did. Something precious had been traded for something easy. If love is a promise, when did ours turn into paperwork? Rain tapped the windows in that steady Portland way. The digital clock blinked 11:47 and held its breath. A chipped navy mug cooled on the dresser. The maple floor felt cold through my bare feet. Downstairs, a calm voice, too calm for a night that smelled like this, said, "It's done. Move the paperwork before morning. Ryan?" The word left my mouth softer than I meant. "Who are you talking to?" Silence answered like a closed door. In some family drama, the loudest sound is the quiet that follows your question. Before we move forward, please subscribe to the channel and share in the comments what time it is where you are right now. Portland, Oregon. Heavy rain. I opened the bedroom door, and the light in the hall was wrong. An orange wash along the baseboard where gray should be. Heat pressed the paint to a shine. The doorknob to the stairwell stung my palm. Somewhere below, a glass cracked. Clean, decisive, like an apology that came too late. I reached the window latch. Old paint stuck the way old arguments do. One slip, then grip. The sash lifted. Cold air rushed in, honest and wet. A photo frame rattled on the nightstand. Clara at 10 with the birdhouse we built. Its glass warm to the touch. "It's done. Move the paperwork before morning." The line replayed in my head, too tidy for a house that had started to breathe hard. "Ryan," I said again, "not to change anything, only to mark the distance between us." The garden below was a dark quilt, hydrangeas soaked through, the stone path shining like coins. I put one leg over the sill, then the other. For a beat, I hesitated, because jumping meant leaving behind birthdays, shoe scuffs, 2 mortgages, and every Saturday I swore I'd fix the crooked mantle. Staying meant letting someone else finish my story. I jumped. Mud caught me with a mercy I didn't earn. The taste of metal. Rain needled my skin. I crawled to the hedgerow, palms burning, ribs protesting. Behind me, the house exhaled one last time, more light than sound, enough to end a chapter, not a life. They would say I was gone. The neighborhood would trade versions by morning, but the man who climbed out that window is the one telling you this now. If the fire didn't kill me, maybe it was born to wake me. Room 17 smelled like bleach and rain. The clerk slid a key across the cracked counter and watched my hand count out $43 in singles and a wrinkled 20. The neon vacancy sign outside blinked as if it were breathing. Down the hall, an ice machine stuttered and fell quiet, the way a person stops talking when they realize you're listening. The TV was already on. Local news, the volume low. A reporter in a blue blazer stood on Maple Street, umbrella rattling. Edward Grant, owner of Grant Builders, is believed to have perished late last night. My name landed with the soft authority of a stamp. A photo of me from a company picnic filled the screen. Khakis, a paper plate, a grin I barely recognized. "Tragic for who?" I said to the empty room. "For me, it sounds like permission." Rain pinned itself to the motel window like postcards you never mailed. I sat on the edge of the bed, springs complaining, and stared at the copy of the policy, $1.2 million, still open on my laptop from a week ago. I hadn't closed the tab. The cursor blinked like a metronome, keeping time for a life that just fell off beat. "Checking in for how long?" the clerk had asked. "One night." I lied without effort. One night is what you say when you don't know who you are in the morning. The harbor a few blocks away kept its own schedule. At 2:10 a.m., a foghorn dragged its note across the water. By 5:45, I was on a loading dock with men who didn't ask names, only backs and hands. A foreman with a gray beanie eyed me. "You new?" "Just passing through." "You got steel toes?" "I have feet that learn fast." He grunted. 18 an hour, cash on Fridays. Don't get hurt. Work has a way of making you a citizen again. Boxes, ropes, a clipboard with numbers that all add up to forgetfulness. I carried weight until my thoughts lost theirs. Nights. I drew a timeline on napkins from the motel lobby. Arrows and dates. Ryan Beckett at the center like a knot you can't loosen. Off to one side, Dylan Cross, the name I circled twice. To the other, Clara, underlined, then underlined again. Coffee rings turned the corners brown, so the notes looked singed even without a match. It's not about rage, I told the room. It's about math. What was signed, when, and by whom? What moved, where, and why? People call this kind of thing betrayal, but to me it began to look like accounting with missing decimals. The clue didn't arrive like a thunderclap. It arrived like a password I hadn't changed since 2018. The business email, my email, still opened. Buried in a monthly reconciliation PDF sat a line that didn't belong. $250,000 ACH to Cross Meridian Holdings LLC, dated 3 days before the fire. Memo. Consulting. Hello, Dylan, I whispered to the glow of the screen. What did you sell that costs $250,000 and comes due in 3 days? I printed the page on the motel's front desk printer for $0.25 a sheet and slid it into a cheap plastic folder I bought at the gas station for $1.99. The kid behind the counter didn't look up from his phone. That's the mercy of strangers. They don't ask the questions family would. Back in room 17, I taped the paper above the desk lamp with 2 pieces of Scotch tape. The light bled through the numbers, making them look warm. The napkins formed a crooked map beneath it. Ryan's voice at 11:47 p.m. The policy, the transfer, the quiet morning that followed. A simple story trying hard to look complicated. My phone, face down on the dresser, buzzed once. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I let it sit. Some messages are better when you know who you're going to be before you hear them. You're not the same, are you? I asked the mirror. Beard coming in, eyes a shade older than yesterday. Good. Let's not be. Outside, the neon blinked again. The ice machine coughed to life. The harbor lifted its shoulder against the wind. I turned off the TV and listened to the room remember it was empty. Dead men don't ask questions. Lucky for me, I'm not dead. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it so others can watch too. Morning rain softened the crime scene tape until it sagged like old ribbon across the yard on Maple Street. The house that once knew birthdays and Sunday pancakes now smelled of wet soot and battery acid. Glass crunched under my boots. Charred beams leaned at odd angles, the way a tired man leans when he's hiding pain. I slipped past the tape and let the ruins speak in the small language of drips and cinders. The bedroom was a rib cage open to the sky. The thermostat hung melted, a warped oval with no numbers left to promise comfort. In the corner, where the floorboards had burned down to black lace, a dull gray rectangle showed itself. A safe, its paint blistered, its dial fused. I knelt. The metal still held the night's heat. I didn't bring hero tools, just a flathead from a thrift store on Burnside, $6 in a coffee-stained Ziploc, and a hammer I found in the trunk of my car. I worked the seam until the hinge gave with a tired pop. Inside, a folder singed at the edges and a small silver drive that looked unharmed, as if it had taken shelter in its own small faith. Paper whispered when I opened the folder. Copies of the policy, $1.2 million, with signatures that tried too hard to look like mine. An addendum I didn't remember authorizing. I said it out loud, because some truths need air. Fire can burn what you own. It can't burn what you've done. A voice behind me answered, gentle and brittle. I saw him, you know. Your son-in-law. I turned. Norma Pierce stood in the doorway in a raincoat the color of faded marigolds, floral umbrella tucked under one arm. Her eyes were clear, the way a long life makes them. "Standing by the sidewalk," she said, "like a man waiting for the weather to change. Not a tear. Are you sure, Norma? I'm old, not blind." He watched until the lights came, then he walked away like he'd missed a bus. The house listened. Rain whispered down the joists. My hands shook, so I put the pages back in the folder and slipped the silver drive into a clean plastic bag. "Thank you for telling me," she touched my sleeve. "I liked the way you shoveled everyone's steps after that snow back in 19. You remember?" "I do." "Good, remember that too." I carried the safe's contents to the back porch, set them on a stair that somehow survived, and took photos with the cracked phone I wasn't supposed to have anymore. Time-stamped, 10:22 a.m. The sky was the color of a nickel. In the reflection on the phone, a man looked back who had learned new grammar. Say less, notice more, keep what matters dry. At a copy shop on Sandy Boulevard, I printed everything again for $0, 25 pounds a page, and bought a manila envelope for $0, 79. I wrote in block letters, "For Detective Monica Reeves." No return address, no flourish. I walked the envelope to the downtown precinct and slid it through the after-hours slot. The metal door clacked shut with a sound I decided to believe in. Back at the harbor by 2:30 p.m., gulls argued over a strip of bread near Dock C. Work crews shouted numbers, tossed ropes, made order out of weight. I sat in my car and copied the drive to an old laptop, then hid the original inside the spare tire well. Insurance forms. Internal emails. A spreadsheet with dates that matched mine. A text export that made my stomach go still. A message from Dylan Cross to Ryan Beckett, 3 days before the night. Funds received. Proceed as planned. You would think anger hits like a wave. For me, it arrived like a quiet sunrise I didn't ask for. The more light it offered, the more truth showed up in corners I hadn't cleaned. There is a word people use for this, and it changes the temperature of a room, betrayal, but I refused to let it turn me into a man who only knew heat. On the motel desk that night, I laid out the copies in neat rows. Dates made a spine. Money made a heartbeat. Names made a kind of map I wished I didn't know how to read. I pictured Clara opening her front door in the morning to her small life. Coffee at $3.25. The elevator at Hillside Residences groaning like always. Did she know? Did she feel the tilt under her feet? Or do we all learn at different speeds how to live with the things we can't forgive? I called the precinct from a payphone outside a laundromat on NE 15th and left a message on Monica Reeves's tip line. "You'll get an envelope. It's mine, but I'm not. Follow the dates, not the voices." I hung up before the machine could ask me to be brave. On Maple Street, the tape finally came down at dusk. The city truck hauled it away like tired bunting after a parade that should never have happened. I stood across from the lot until my clothes smelled like the place again. The wind pushed ash into the gutters. Somewhere a neighbor's TV laughed at the wrong time. If truth can survive a fire, why do we keep choosing the dark we know? The Meridian login page looked exactly as it had years ago. Gray banner, blue serif font, a logo that wanted to be trusted. Back when Grant Builders finished their seismic retrofit on Meridian's downtown office, they issued me a temporary internal ID so I could sign punch lists and warranty scans. No one had bothered to turn it off. I tried the old credentials from a Gmail archive I should have deleted. The cursor spun, hesitated, and then the portal opened the way a door opens when someone forgot to lock it. Claims, internal notes, approvals. The site spoke a polite, clerical language that hid its temperature. I searched my name. One result. Claim M311184. Policy $1,200,000. I clicked through and felt the desk lamp warm my forearm. The PDF loaded. Beneficiary, Ryan Beckett. Approver, Dylan Cross. A signature that tried to be mine sat where mine should never have been. I pressed my phone to my mouth and recorded, quiet and careful, the way a man reads a verdict to himself. Payout, $1.2 million. Beneficiary, Ryan Beckett. Approver, Dylan Cross. The audit log was the part that mattered. Timestamps, IP addresses. Addendum executed 8:36 p.m. The e-sign trail listed a device geolocated within 3 blocks of the river, close enough to the harbor light to smell the fryer. A second packet showed Clara Grant Beckett, marked as viewed and signed at times that didn't match her calendar. The envelope history flagged a substitute authentication method I knew Clara would never use. The initials looked right. The cadence of the strokes did not. Paper knows the hands that make it honest. I stepped outside to the payphone by the laundromat on NE 15th. The receiver smelled like coins and bleach. Detective Reeves, it's the same voice that mailed you the envelope, I said when the machine answered. Check Meridian claim M31184. Follow the log, not the letterhead. I left the burner number the clerk at the corner store had activated for $39.99 plus tax. I walked 2 blocks before it rang. Her voice was flat in the way experienced people keep their balance. If this is real, you're holding a bomb. Good, I said, watching rain turn a pothole into a small mirror. I'm ready to light the fuse. You don't light anything, she said. You send me the fuse and you stand back. A pause. You understand me? I do. The line hummed. One more thing. If you see my daughter's name on anything, assume the worst about how it got there. Back in room 17, I spread fresh printouts across the bedspread. $0.25 a page from the motel office printer. Manila folder, $0.79 from the copy shop. Dates found their order. Money found its motive. Names found each other like magnets inside a drawer. It would be easy to call this deceit, but that gave it too much poetry. What I saw was clerical, a series of tidy steps taken by people who counted on tidy steps to make them invisible. I thought of Clara's elevator keycard at Hillside Residences, of morning coffee receipts, $3.25 at the lobby cafe, of how routine can be a kind of shelter and a kind of blindfold. Would she remember the night she was supposed to have signed? Did she notice a gap where a memory should live? Or do we all discover, piece by piece, that some of our signatures were written by someone else's needs? At 2:30 p.m., I drove to a FedEx drop on SW 3rd and slid a second packet addressed to Monica into the blue mouth that swallows secrets. In the parking lot, rain stitched lines across the windshield and made the city look honest again. I checked the spare tire well, USB tucked inside a zippered pouch, then closed the trunk with the gentle force of a promise I planned to keep. When I looked at my hands, I saw paper cuts I couldn't remember earning. That seemed right. Paper hurts in quiet ways. The house had burned fast. The documents would burn slow, in offices with windows that never open, under lights that never rest. I wasn't here to rage. I was here to watch numbers tell the truth the way fire never could. They turned my home to ash. It will be the paper that buries them. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it so others can watch too. Meridian Tower smelled like citrus cleaner and ambition. The lobby clock read 9:08 a.m., Portland rain tracing gray threads down the glass. I signed the visitor log as Jack Harris, accepted a plastic badge that flashed 19F, and rode a mirrored elevator past floors named for virtues, integrity, prudence, vision, like a company trying to convince itself. The receptionist poured me water in a paper cup and smiled without committing to it. Mr. Cross will see you at 9:30. I thanked her and studied a framed photo on the wall. Last year's charity gala, champagne and borrowed tuxedos. On the far edge of the picture, a familiar profile tilted toward the camera. Ryan liked cameras. At 9:32, A door opened on the 19th floor, and a man with careful hair extended a precise hand. "Jack Harris, I've heard you're curious about risk. I've heard success has a scent," I said, letting him choose the meaning. "Some say money, some say fuel." He smiled with only half his face. "Depends who's holding the match. Come in." His office held a view of the river and a trophy of glass triangles that said something about growth. He gestured to a chair and leaned on his desk with 2 fingers, as if the wood might bruise. We traded small talk first. Markets, weather, the cost of concrete. I let him lead. People tell the truth when they think they're only explaining. "I'm looking at a portfolio," I said. "Mixed assets, exposure across construction and commercial property. Before I place a dollar, I want to know who at Meridian moves approvals when the clock is tight." "Approvals," he said, tasting the word. "We pride ourselves on velocity, not recklessness." "Of course. Velocity belongs to people who already know the answer." His eyes measured me. "What answer are you hoping for?" "The one I can test," I said. "For example, on a 7-figure policy, who signs when the beneficiary has a tight timeline?" He let silence do some work. "That would be my team." Then I came to the right door. He lifted a folder, thin as a promise. "Not my folder, not yet. We don't usually meet new investors without a warm intro. I warm up quickly." A line appeared at the corner of his mouth. "What's your play, Mr. Harris? Find out whether your paper trail is as clean as your lobby." He laughed once, soft. "Paper trails are like rivers, clean where tourists can see them. Then let's take a walk where the boats dock." The room held its breath. He pivoted to numbers. Loss ratios, weather events, a boutique unit that helps clients across finishing lines when timing matters. I nodded like a man who loves jargon. On the credenza, a phone lit with a silent text. He didn't look, which told me he already knew what it would say. "You like your metaphors," he said. "They help me remember what matters. What matters here is discretion. What matters here is accuracy." Something changed in his posture. A fraction. He stood and walked me to the door with the ease of a man ending a negotiation he hadn't begun. "Let's have my assistant schedule something next week. Bring a statement of funds." "Gladly." I paused in the doorway. "And Dylan? When velocity outruns prudence, it's not speed, it's skid." He smiled. "We're very good drivers." The elevator down felt slower. In the lobby, the receptionist looked up as if she'd heard a note only dogs can hear. I stepped into the rain and crossed to a coffee cart on the corner. Americano, 3D50 $50. I took my paper cup to the window of a bakery and watched Meridian's glass doors. At 9:58, Dylan appeared in the reflection of the lobby marble, talking to a man with a security pin. The guard typed something. The receptionist handed over a clipboard. My badge number. The name Jack Harris. They weren't checking my calendar. They were checking my past. The phone in my pocket, a prepaid with a number that belonged to no one, buzzed once. I let it go to voicemail. I watched a delivery truck mirror the tower as it passed, the whole building sliding along its panels like a secret trying to escape. I called back 10 minutes later from a payphone at the corner. "Detective Reeves," I said when the line connected. "Assume my name is under a light you can't see." Her voice was steady. "You made an impression." "I meant to. Impressions have footprints. Stay off carpet." "I'm in the rain," I said. "It washes clean." She exhaled. "Send me anything that looks like it was signed by someone who wasn't there." Already in motion. I hung up and watched people carry their mornings to work in paper bags. An old man in a wool coat tapped ash into a puddle, then ground it out with the care of someone erasing a mistake. Across the street, the tower glowed the way certainty does, brightest when you're standing in it. I sipped coffee that had gone bitter and thought of Clara riding the elevator at Hillside, of Ryan posing for cameras that weren't pointed at him, of how institutions learn to smile. Under the finest suit, there is always a face that believes it will never be seen. Sometimes it's right. Today I saw enough. When the hunter gets noticed, the game doesn't end. It begins. Hillside Residences sells safety by the square foot. The unit they moved into was listed at $890,000, which, judging by the lobby art, buys you good lighting and a concierge who pretends not to notice people pretending not to hurt. I stood across the street under a dripping cedar at 6:42 p.m., cap low, beard doing the rest. Portland rain can be generous. It blurs faces without charging extra. Inside, the elevator chimed, one clean note per floor, like a metronome for secrets. I watched the glass reflect the city. It gave me their world backward, which felt appropriate. A woman exited with a stroller, the front wheel squeaking on polished stone. The squeak kept time with my heart. I went in like a man checking comps. The concierge greeted me with a smile that had HOA fees in it. "Tours are by appointment," he said. "I'm not here to buy," I answered. "Just checking what money looks like when it sleeps." That earned me a blink and a brochure. Pool hours, a recycling schedule, HOA $620 a month, a photo of the rooftop garden that only blooms on sunny days the photographer books in advance. I took the brochure like a passport and sat by the lobby planter, far enough to be no one, close enough to listen. They arrived 10 minutes later. Clara first, hair tied back, a canvas tote from the grocery down the hill, receipt peeking out. $38.17. Berries, oat milk, bread, hope. Ryan behind her, phone in hand, the kind of man who walks like every hallway belongs to him, because most of them have. When the elevator doors opened, they paused. "Why do you keep dodging questions about my dad?" she said, voice low but present. "Because the dead can't sue us," he said, eyes on the screen. He smiled at his reflection in the elevator's chrome. Just a flicker, then stepped inside. The doors closed. If humor was going to visit, it chose not to. I exhaled something I didn't have a name for and looked down at the brochure map, tracing the path to the side stairwell I'd clocked earlier. The door opened with a muted beep, the kind that says you're allowed if you act like you are. On 19, the hallway smelled like eucalyptus cleaner and a neighbor's overconfident curry. Their door, 1907, wore a tasteful wreath that tried hard to look spontaneous. I didn't knock, I listened. Sometimes the quiet is a better witness than the man who wants to talk. "You changed the subject again," she said inside. "Every time." "It's grief," he replied. "It asks for boundaries. Grief doesn't ask for paperwork," she said. "That's not fair." "What is?" Feet crossed carpet. A drawer slid. I pictured documents arranged by a man who believes tidy proves innocent. My palms warmed. I left the hallway before the building left me. Down 2 flights, into the service corridor, out to P2, where the cement sweats even in winter. In the car, I opened the folder and laid out what a life looks like when you reduce it to dates and signatures. I had photos from Maple Street, time-stamped, copies of claim logs, the $250,000 transfer to Cross Meridian Holdings, a screen capture of a message where 2 men wrote like they were ordering lunch. The evidence didn't shout. It hummed, steady, unfancy, accurate. I printed a short packet at a 24-hour place on NW 23rd, $0, 25 cents a page, and sealed it in a nondescript envelope. On the first photo, I wrote only, "Look at the times." On the second, "Look at the strokes." On the last, "Look at him." No return address, no lecture. I addressed it to Clara at Hillside and dropped it at the front desk after midnight. The night porter glanced at the name, then at me, then at the rain. "I'll make sure she gets it in the morning." "Thank you," I said. "Morning is a good time for light." Back in room 17, I set my phone face down and waited for nothing. The motel fridge clicked on. The ice machine coughed. I tried to imagine her opening the envelope, coffee in one hand, proof in the other, bridging the 2 worlds she lives in, the man she married and the man who raised her. The rings we wear mean one thing on a wedding day, and another when the light hits them from a different angle. Circles don't lie. They just keep returning to where they started. At 9:11 a.m., a message arrived from a number I didn't know. No words, only a photo. His watch on the counter, face up. 8:36 p.m., blinking. A printed document beside it, signatures neat as a sermon. Then another photo, the same document held against the window. The strokes were wrong under daylight. A third, an elevator panel with the 19 button lit, her thumb in the corner of the frame, shaking. "Tell me I'm not crazy," she texted. "You're not," I typed. "You're awake." No response. Then, after 5 minutes that felt like a church with no doors, "If this is true, what do I do?" "You do what you always do," I wrote. "You tell the truth, even if you have to whisper it first." On nights like this, a little dark humor tries to bargain. Mine said, "Congrats, you've sent your daughter a DIY kit for heartbreak. Assembly required." I let it talk and then let it go. There are times to be clever and times to be kind. If I had known how to choose better, we wouldn't be here. By afternoon, I saw her leave the building alone. No tote, no ring. She walked toward the streetcar like a person who is trying on her own name again. She didn't look back. I did that for both of us, both. Where does trust go when it leaves a house? Does it haunt the mailroom, ride the elevator, sit in the lobby pretending to read? Or does it wait outside with the rest of us, hoping someone will carry it upstairs and say, "This belongs to you"? The word for what sat between them, between all of us, had weight and temperature. I could feel it in my teeth. Betrayal. But I wouldn't let it decide the weather of my soul. How do you save someone who still loves the very poison that is killing them? I asked the windshield. The rain offered no opinion. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it so others can watch too. The first leak landed at 7:12 a.m. Subject line, "Query on claim M31184." By noon, 3 more outlets had forwarded the same attachments: redacted logs, a clipped audio file, timestamps that refused to blink. Reporters love patterns. Patterns love daylight. Somewhere in a glass office, someone was practicing a smile in case cameras showed up. Ryan called Dylan from the curb outside Beckett and Grant. A town car idled. Steam rose from a manhole like the city was thinking too hard. "You said this was covered," Ryan said, voice sanded down to a whisper. "It was until you made heat part of the plan," Dylan answered. "I didn't burn a person," Ryan said. "I burned a past." "Congratulations," Dylan said. "Past tense still conjugates." The company's PR firm sent invoices in neat PDFs. $6,500 for narrative stabilization, $1,900 for media coaching, all payable net 15. In a group thread, someone wrote, "We stay off the record." Someone else replied with a fire emoji, which would have been funny if it weren't a confession in sticker form. I watched copies pile into Detective Monica Reeves's inbox from a corner table at a coffee shop on SW 10th. My receipt, Americano, 3D50s, wrinkled under a ring of condensation. By afternoon, the city was dressing up for a cause. The Portland Art Museum prepared for the Light the Future Gala, tickets $500 a plate, proceeds to an education fund that would someday teach kids how to spot a lie. I rented a black jacket from a shop on NW 23rd, $79 for the night, plus a deposit the clerk promised I'd get back as long as you don't live in it. I told him I would try to keep breathing separate from wearing. Gala light has its own weather. It flattens every surface into comfort. Glass clinked. A quartet tested a ballad from the last wedding I ever enjoyed. Donors practiced laughter in the lobby mirrors. I stood inside the door as Jack Harris, a man no one remembered meeting before. It's easy to be invisible when everyone is busy being seen. At 8:06 p.m., Ryan entered with a smile that fit him like a new suit. Dylan came 5 minutes later, checking his phone the way a guilty man checks a locked door. On stage, the MC thanked corporate partners who make nights like this possible. Somewhere behind the curtain, Monica Reeves adjusted an earpiece and counted heartbeats. She had placed her team like coat hooks, ordinary until you need one. They found each other near the donor wall. "Media won't run with it if there's no quote," Ryan said, eyes scanning the room. "They'll run with silence," Dylan said. Quieter reads as guilt. What do you suggest? I toast to good fortune? I suggest you stop saying anything cute, Dylan hissed. You sound like a headline. Monica stepped into their orbit with the grace of someone who still sends thank you notes. Gentlemen, she said, warm enough to pass, cool enough to last. Detective Reeves, off duty on curiosity. She showed nothing but presence. I'm working a thread about approvals that move faster than weather. I'd love a comment. On what? Ryan asked, trying to own the floor with the question mark. On the difference between acceleration and arrangement, she said. One is timing, the other is intent. We're not speaking tonight, Dylan answered. You just did, she said, and drifted toward the bar like a woman who enjoyed her own company. I watched Ryan rub his wedding band like it was a worry stone. He ordered a whiskey, $18 plus a tip he didn't look at, and stared into the amber as if it contained an alibi. A photographer lifted a camera and captured a glow that would not age well. Across the room, a local anchor practiced her opening. Allegations swirl. The cellist found a low note that made the glassware sympathetic. It felt like standing in a bell while someone considered ringing it. I moved along the perimeter, a shadow collecting details. The donor list alphabetized, the seating chart with 2 names placed far apart that used to sit close, the program leaf that thanked Meridian for operational support. Words can hide better than people. Dylan peeled away to the balcony. Ryan followed, his smile left behind like a napkin. I took the long route past sculptures that had outlived their patrons. Outside, the air carried rain in the planning stage. Streetlight made the slick stone thoughtful. This will pass, Ryan said, trying out optimism like a rented tie. Nothing passes once it's filed, Dylan answered. I can make statements. We were grieving. Grief doesn't counterfeit signatures, Dylan said. You think I forged those? I think you hired convenience and called it grief, Dylan said, and for a second I almost pitied the accuracy. Monica didn't rush them. She let gravity do her work. When she finally approached, it was with a small envelope and a smaller smile. I found these in the public domain, she said. Audit logs. Funny how public some things are, once someone cares. What do you want? Ryan asked. The same thing paper wants, she said. To be read in order. Inside the ballroom, the MC tapped the mic. Friends, a few remarks before dinner. Forks paused mid-air. Phones slipped face down onto linen. The screen behind the stage brightened with a slideshow titled Light the Future. For a full second, it showed exactly that. Kids with notebooks, science fair trophies, the comfortable future donors imagine for strangers. Then the slide stuttered. A different image replaced it, a blurred screenshot of Claim M31184's approval chain. A second slide, timestamps. A third, the e-signature page cropped to 2 sets of initials that looked like mine and Clara's, except for the parts that didn't. A murmur went through the room like wind through tall grass. No one clapped. I'm sorry, the MC said, blinking at the booth. Tech issue. But the truth is not a technical difficulty. It is a mirror at noon. I didn't look at Ryan. I looked at the people looking at him. The way donors decide who they are with their eyes. Dylan stood very still, as if stillness could be a strategy. Monica watched the crowd watch the slides, then nodded to no one in particular. She had what she needed. Sometimes justice is just a room finally seeing itself. A reporter near the back whispered to her producer, "We need 2 quotes and a clean timeline." The producer answered, "We already have both." The quartet tried to reclaim the moment with a standard from 1979. The melody did its best. What do men do when their names float on screens? They remember who taught them to spell. They rehearse apologies for rooms without microphones. They wish dinner would be served sooner. They invent new definitions of the word misunderstanding. In that glow, I felt nothing triumphant. Only the strange calm of a story choosing a speed it should have had all along. In a different life, I would have preferred quiet evenings and long games of catch. In this one, I preferred accuracy. Call it what you want. Spin, PR, damage control. I have another word. Deceit loves company events because everyone is dressed for forgiveness. Tonight, the clothes didn't help. When truth speaks at noon, can a liar sleep at night? Monday, 10:04 a.m., downtown. The elevator to Beckett and Grant climbed with the smug hush of a place that believes in itself. I caught my reflection in the steel, clean-shaven black suit, the gold band from my wife catching a strip of fluorescent light. It wasn't costume, it was a reminder. The security badge clipped to my lapel said visitor, which felt generous. The boardroom could have landed a small plane. 12 leather chairs. A table so polished, the city skated across it. Someone had set out bottled water at $3.75 apiece, caps lined like soldiers. A screen woke to the company logo, then dozed again, as if modesty were part of the brand. Ryan came in first, phone in hand, confidence arriving half a step ahead of him. He looked up, paused, and misplaced a word he liked to use. Control. "Who are you?" he asked, and the question tried to boss the room. "The man you tried to turn into smoke," I said. My voice surprised me. No tremor, just weathered. Dylan slipped in behind him, careful hair a touch less certain today. "Not possible," he muttered, already working on a version of events that didn't include me breathing. "Not impossible," I answered. "Just unavoidable." Ryan forced a smile so quickly he forgot to include his eyes. "We have a meeting starting. If you're here to, make a statement, council can arrange a time. I'm here to end something," I said, "and begin the part where paper reads its own handwriting." He set the phone down, screen face up, like a dare. "You have an invitation, Mr. Edward," I said. "You already know the rest." The boardroom did the listening people usually do, politely, in wood and glass. I slid a thin folder across the table, stopped at the halfway mark, and let my hand rest on it, palm open. Claim M31184. Audit logs, approvals, a consulting payment, $250,000 to Cross Meridian Holdings, 3 days before a night we all remember for different reasons. "I don't know what you think you have," Dylan said. "But context is a thing. Context is a thing," I agreed. "It's the thing you didn't think I'd live to supply." A knock at the door. Not timid. Not dramatic. Practical. Detective Monica Reeves stepped in with 2 colleagues who looked like paper with feet. Calm, squared edges. Patient with time. She offered a small nod to the room as if returning a borrowed item. "Good morning. Do keep your seats." Ryan tried to stand anyway and discovered he had forgotten how. "This is private property. Truth rarely cares who paid for the door," Monica said. She placed a sealed envelope on the table, beside the water bottles. "Subpoenas for records. Electronic and physical. You'll recognize the case number." Dylan reached for his phone. Monica's colleague reached for a pen. "Phones can stay," she said. "But they don't get to leave before the paperwork does." Ryan attempted charm like a man rifling a drawer for a receipt he never kept. "Detective, surely we can discuss—" She turned slightly, catching the screen's shine on her badge. "We are discussing it, with documents." If there was humor in the room, it had the sense to keep quiet. I took a breath that felt like it belonged to a younger man. The twist didn't announce itself. It arrived as a voice memo on Monica's device. 3 seconds of silence, then a whisper that could have been mine when it was kinder. She tapped play and let the room have it. "Detective Reeves, this is Clara. I'm sending the original drive now. He doesn't know. Please protect the chain. Please protect my father." Ryan didn't move. Dylan did, but only enough to lose balance. The boardroom glass offered everyone 2 versions of their face, and neither looked rested. Monica slid a small padded envelope from her case and set it beside my folder. "Your daughter sent the original. The copy you mailed matches. We verified checksums." She said it like a weather report. High chance of consequences by late afternoon. Ryan found his mouth. "She's confused. Grief. Grief doesn't sign contracts it didn't read," I said. Grief doesn't geotag approvals 3 blocks from the harbor light. Dylan tried a different angle. If this were real, you wouldn't have walked in here. You'd have let it leak itself to death. I did both, I said. That's the thing about rooms like this. They believe leaks are a problem for other floors. Monica's colleagues began a gentle harvest of what the room thought it owned. USB keys, an external drive with a label in neat print, 2 binders whose tabs advertised Velocity Unit. They gave receipts. Even Justice does its paperwork. Ryan gripped the table's edge as if wood could vote. "Do you want to ruin us?" he asked, and for the first time the pronoun sounded like it included my daughter. "I want accuracy," I said. "The kind where names sit where they belong. The kind where a marriage doesn't have to carry a ledger." He stared at my ring, caught the light on it, and looked away. "You're not the only one who lost something." "I know," I said. "But not all losses are equal. Some are practice." Dylan tried one last line. "We can settle," Monica answered for me. "Settle with whom? The city? The policies? The year you tried to erase?" Her tone was almost kind. "This isn't the part where you negotiate. This is the part where you document." I picked up my folder and stood. My legs remembered the doc's work and held. "You'll tell the story the way men like you tell it," I said to no one, and to both. "I'll let paper do the rest." A small, tired laugh tried to climb the back of my throat, black humor with bad timing. I swallowed it. Some lines only feel clever to the person who gets to leave the room. As I reached the door, Monica spoke without looking at me. "Mr. Grant." "Yes." "She asked me to tell you she's safe." I turned. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," she said. "Thank the person who chose noon over midnight." In the hallway, the carpet swallowed footsteps like it had practice. I pressed the elevator button and watched the numbers come to get me. Behind the boardroom glass, men became small actors in a scene they didn't audition for. You could call what brought me there a dozen names: anger, duty, faith. The oldest one still fit best, a father keeping a light on, even when the house is gone. People think this is how revenge stories end. They don't. They trade rooms. They change weather. They learn to live at a different pace. The doors opened. I stepped in. The ring on my finger flashed once and then behaved itself. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it so others can watch too. 6 months later, Courtroom 5B smelled like floor wax and paper cuts. The seal above the bench watched us all with that calm birds have when people argue beneath them. I took the end seat in the second row, where fathers sit who want to be present, but not the show. The clock over the door read 9:02 a.m. and refused to hurry. The clerk called it State va Beckett, State va Cross, and the room settled the way a pond does after a thrown stone. Dylan Cross stood first. His tie was obedient. His eyes were not. Counsel whispered. He nodded. "Guilty," he said, the word landing without drama, like a box placed gently where it belongs. Fraud. Conspiracy. The judge listed counts, dates, penalties. Restitution to match the $1.2 million policy. Plus fines. Dylan stared at the table as if it might offer a different number. Ryan Beckett took the spot next. The suit fit. The moment didn't. He kept his head down, reading a script only he could see. The prosecutor started with the math. Bank transfers, audit logs, timestamps at 8:36 p.m. And then with the human parts, a house on Maple Street, a daughter, the kind of trust that expects to outlive paper. "Mr. Beckett," she asked, "did you orchestrate the events of that night?" "I don't remember," he said, and the words tried to be fog and ended up being a mirror. I leaned just enough for the message to reach him, and no one else. Memories built on lies evaporate faster than smoke. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. The air between us carried it. Clara sat 3 rows ahead, hands folded, shoulders squared. No ring. She didn't look back either. Courage often faces forward because it has work to do. Detective Monica Reeves occupied the aisle seat like a bookmark, quiet as paper and twice as patient. When the exhibits came up, the claim chain, the forged initials that looked like hours until daylight told the truth, Monica watched the jurors see what paper had been saying all along. Courthouse coffee costs $2.75 and tastes like photocopies. I learned that at the recess, when a reporter asked if I'd like to share what this means for your healing journey. I told him healing rarely uses microphones. He wrote it down anyway, as if sense were news. Back inside, closing arguments treated the room with respect. The prosecutor lifted only what she needed. Defense tried the weather. Grief, timing, confusion. As if rain could sign contracts. The judge's instructions were lean. Decide the facts. Leave the rest for mornings that come later, he said. And I liked him for that. The verdict didn't make theater of itself. Guilty on the primary counts. Not every charge, but enough to build a sentence that had shape. The judge spoke numbers the way doctors deliver temperatures. Dylan had accepted his earlier. Ryan received 15 years, with restitution and supervision to see that paper kept its promises. He finally looked my way then, as if eye contact could be a kind of appeal. I didn't mean, he started, the sentence falling apart before the verb. Meanings don't sign forms, I answered, almost kindly. People do. Reporters moved as one organism toward the aisle. Microphones surfaced like periscopes. Mr. Grant, someone called. Do you have a statement? I stood, buttoned the jacket I'd rented for $79 at the gallery months ago and never returned, and walked past the questions. Hallway light is honest. It tells you exactly how tired you look. At the foot of the stairs, Clara waited. No music, no embrace, just two people who owned the same last name for reasons that still felt good. We did the right thing, she said. We did the necessary thing, I said. Sometimes that's the same. Outside, the city tested spring. Pigeons practiced being citizens. A school group lined up for a field trip, teachers checking the list twice like Faith. I thought about how this whole mess started as family drama pretending to be paperwork, and how it ended as paperwork finally confessing to family. Justice doesn't shout. It nods, signs, records. It lets the door close behind you, and the hallway return to its small noises. It doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to be seen. A year later, the Oregon coast kept its quiet promises. The morning wind came off the water, salted and clean, tugging at the edges of a paper map on my porch table. The map wasn't of roads. It was my ledger. Small grants logged in blue ink, checks mailed to people who never planned to learn words like restitution. I called it the Maple Street Fund because some names deserve a better ending. We kept the lights on with donations that arrived in envelopes with shaky handwriting. $20, $75, $300, with a note that said, "For someone who needs a beginning." Our office sat above a bait shop, where coffee tastes like ambition and salt. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 to 1, we answered calls. A woman from Medford who signed a thing she didn't understand. A retired teacher from Bend, polite even while her voice shook. A chef in Astoria whose name appeared on a loan he never took. Paper gives and paper takes. We tried to teach it manners. Some days, Detective Monica Reeves stopped by on her way south, a thermos in one hand and new questions in the other. "You'd be good teaching young officers," she said once, leaning on the porch rail. "You notice what doesn't move." "I had a year of practice watching houses learn to speak," I said. She smiled. "You also learned when not to. Clara wrote me letters on heavy stationery, the kind you buy when you want words to stand up straight. Dad, you taught me truth doesn't die," one began. "It waits for brave hearts to find it." She still used our old address on the envelope out of habit. The postmark got it here anyway, the way tide carries what's owed to shore. Some afternoons we met halfway in Salem for soup and a quiet table. We didn't talk about court. We talked about a ceramic birdhouse and a girl with a crooked smile who wouldn't let her father throw it away, even when the roof fell off. Grief changes shape, then changes back. It's a loyal visitor with bad timing. Ryan's sentence came with programs and therapy and a chance to write letters he hasn't sent. Dylan's restitution checks arrive quarterly like sober weather. I deposit them without ceremony. Accountability is a long road with mile markers that don't brag. One thing about coastal towns, everyone has a story, and the ocean listens for free. I walked the beach in a black windbreaker that still carried a courtroom's starch in its seams. A kid flying a cheap kite lost the string. The kite climbed anyway. His mom laughed, then chased, then laughed again. I found myself laughing with them before the sound turned into something else and quieted. The heart has to teach the mouth what to do after it remembers. At 4:12 p.m., my phone buzzed with a number I recognize now. The Hillside Concierge. "Mr. Harris, Ms. Grant left a small box for you." Inside was my wife's music box, the one that used to live on a Maple Street dresser. Clara had found it in a storage bin, wrapped in a sweater we argued about giving away. The key still wound. The tune still missed a note at the end, and somehow, that felt right. Not everything is meant to resolve on the first try. A text from Norma Pierce arrived just after sunset. "Stopped by the lot. City planted a tree. It looks determined." I pictured the sapling staking a claim where a living room once exhaled. Trees understand time better than people. They forgive by growing. What matters most, people ask, after all of this? That paper finally told the truth. That a daughter chose noon over midnight. That a ring can mean memory without meaning ownership. That we learned the difference between being right and being whole. The world will keep making its own noise. Justice prefers the volume low. Somewhere, an anchor is still rehearsing a line about deceit and recovery. Let them. We carry what we know. If you're looking for a philosophy to take home, I have only this. The past is a place to visit, not to live. And forgiveness is something you do in the present tense, so tomorrow has room to arrive. I stood at the shoreline until the tide reached my shoes and leaned back. The sea erased my footprints one by one, like a patient editor. The last orange of daylight found the ring on my finger and set it briefly on fire. Maybe that's the answer the night owed me. Some flames destroy, and some simply reveal what survives them. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about it in the comments. Thank you for watching. Wishing you health and a home that holds. See you in the next episode.